Hi Sandra, lovely to see you today.
Hello. Two Sandras today, hey?
Two double Sandras, it's just the gift. It's just the gift, isn't it?
It just keeps on giving.
It just keeps on giving. So you're in Spain today, I'm in the UK,
Yes.
so it's great to have you on to talk about all things working abroad. So just a bit of an introduction about Sandra. So you've had a really interesting career because you had an HR background, executive level. Then you moved with your family over to Spain and continued in HR, and then now with your own company, which is WL Costa Property, and we'll put the details below. You're absolutely thriving. It sounds brilliant, Sandra.
Oh, thank you, Sandra. Yeah. So yeah, you're right. I've probably had a colourful career. I've probably as a person by nature, have never really been somebody that would have had a very linear career that,
Right, yeah.
I never thought from when I was young that I could see myself kind of doing the same thing forever. So I love a bit of variety. So I've been very, very grateful that that's been reflected in my career. And you're right. Yeah, I have a background in HR. Before I left my HR career 2 years ago to work more in my family business, which was growing, I had got to an executive level HR career in an international space. So I had really had the privilege of supporting HR and recruitment teams across multiple different countries. So when we were talking about, what can we chat about? I thought that, hey, look, this could be something interesting because especially for your audience, right, when it comes to their career and the next steps, there might be people out there that, especially now on the back of the pandemic and the remote world and virtual world we live in, that maybe want to pursue a career overseas. So I'm happy to hopefully share some things I've picked up along the way.
I'm really excited about this because the more I think about it, I mean, the job market over here is actually quite difficult at the moment as well. So I'm all, with the work I'm doing at the moment is around young people, but I think this can also translate and help other people as well who might be thinking to move abroad. Those key things that you need to think about. So it could be a wider remit as well. So that's brilliant. So I suppose, just give us a little bit of an update. Well, no, we talked about your career, but your experiences and working abroad, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. So I moved to Spain in 2016 with my family, and before I moved, I had a senior director career. I had a HR qualification, HR degree, but when I had that initially, I didn't really migrate into HR. I was kind of an operations girl, and I worked in the contact center BPO space. And when we left in 2016, I quickly kind of went on the hunt in Spain to see what can I do, because Spain had a bit of a bad reputation, right, when it comes to building a serious career for foreigners. It was that assumption that, are you going to work in a beach bar? Are you going to do waitressing? Not that there's anything wrong with that, but has a bad reputation for people that maybe want to relocate and continue their career. So I was a bit like a dog with a bone with this. I started to research international companies close to Malaga where I lived, because I was learning Spanish but not fluent enough to move into a Spanish role. And I made my short list, and I found a role, and I started in operations in that company, and then very quickly migrated to HR. And this company was an international company based in Spain who would have kind of supported a nearshoring concept. So foreigners moving down to Spain, servicing clients in multiple different languages. So I got great experience, I guess, of working with, a real big cultural mix of different nationalities. And then my career progressed quite nicely with that company. And then I took a role at exec level HR, supporting more of a regional role. So I would have supported countries, Spain, Norway, Denmark, Sweden, Finland, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. So very different cultural mix.
Quite an interesting mix of areas, that, isn't it? So yeah.
And in that role, I looked after HR strategy for the region, but I also ran recruitment, comms, and marketing.
Yeah.
I ran a high volume recruitment team, and we would have recruited between 3,000 and 3,500 people a year.
Wow.
So there's a lot to think about when it comes to, the recruitment differences and nuances across countries. So yeah.
No, that's brilliant. And how did you find the language then? Because when you moved to Spain, did you speak Spanish? Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, very little. And this is a great question, Sandra, because often when people have a dream of moving abroad, right, the career is one thing that really puts them off because they think, I can't do it. And one of the first blocks that they get mentally is, well, I don't speak the language. Okay. And
right.
They probably don't see neighbours, colleagues, friends doing it unless it was somebody who learned that language in college and did an Erasmus year or university, so on and so forth. But actually, what they often don't do, especially in countries like Spain or many other countries, you will have international companies based in those countries. And in international companies, the business language will be English. So I tailored my job search towards international companies. And because I lived near Malaga Airport is a bit of a hub for international companies because it's great proximity and routes to the rest of the world. And then I think when people start to think about this question, they really need to think about what's their plan for Spain. So are they planning to stay long term or short term? Now, if you're long term, you will need to learn the language, okay? But it shouldn't deter you starting your job search because you can tailor your search to companies where there is a more of an international flair or they've got an international footprint, and they're not looking particularly for that more local specialised Spanish role, for example.
Yeah. And what is the difference about applying for roles? We're probably all aware, even if we're starting out looking for jobs, then we've probably got a bit of an idea. Is there a difference between applying for jobs in Spain or abroad, in your experience, to being in the UK?
Yeah, there's nuances, there's differences when it comes to how to approach your search and what to do and what not to do, particularly on your CV and as you prepare for interview. So maybe we start with the CV, for example. So the CV structure and approach tends to look and feel different if you're coming from UK or Ireland than if you're sitting or applying for a role in Southern Europe or Northern Europe. Now, it's very common on a CV in Southern or Northern Europe to have a photograph. Now, you know from your HR background, we would kind of go away from that because you'd be like, it can be seen as a ground for being prejudiced. So so it's very common. And actually, when you don't put your headshot on your CV in Southern Europe or Northern Europe, they'll be like, this is odd. Why have we not got a CV? So you could be doing yourself a disservice. Yeah. Okay.
That's a great bit of advice.
Yeah. And don't do a selfie, like when you're getting ready to go out to the pub.
Yeah.
Get somebody to take a nice
drink in your hand.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's important. And as well, like marital status, it's common to put your marital status or your age in this neck of the woods, which, like, coming from like where I come from in Ireland, that's a no-no. So I think it's important to understand that as well. When it comes to the CV, they do share a little bit more on the CV. That's an important one to note. I'd say as well, actually, while we're talking about the CV as well, it's very important that, and this is just from my own experience and opinion, that you adapt the mindset of the recruiter. So if you're coming from a country where you have a very traditional name, I think you need to be mindful that the recruiter who's screening and through your CV, it's very likely that their first language won't be English. So you need to make the job easy for them. Right. Yes. So I'm going to use a very common. So I'm obviously from Ireland. You know that. I tell by my accent. And in Ireland, we have some very, very traditional names that can be, that don't look and sound the same at all. And I remember once when I was running the recruitment department in my last role, I was actually contacted by a girl from Ireland who I knew was actively on the job search from Spain. And I knew that her skill set was a great match for what we were looking for. And she contacted me and kind of said, look, I'm not really getting anywhere with this. Nobody's coming back to me. So I was like, oh, I'm going to just take a look at this. But she had a very, very traditional name with an incredibly difficult spelling. And what transpired was the recruiter, because we were working in a large volume recruitment department, that they skipped over the CV for an easier one just due to time.
Okay. Yes.
So I would say if you're applying in a different country and maybe the name is more unusual, maybe spell it out, or say like Sandra known as Sandy, you know, just for an example.
Making it really easy.
Yeah. You have to make the recruiter's job easy for them.
And that's a really good point, actually, is it, about like the amount of CVs that come in when the recruiters are going through and looking at them. I suppose nowadays as well, there is the element of AI, and do you know what I mean? And you're shortlisted before you even get in front of someone in the recruitment team.
Exactly.
So that's a real key thing, isn't it, for the CV?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, for me, it's about when you're preparing the CV, you need to put your head into the mindset of the recruiter sitting in that country that's going to be reviewing your details, and you just want to make their life as easy for them as possible. Like, you would be so surprised the amount of CVs that we would have come across that the phone number didn't work. You know,
oh, really? Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
And, you know, email address as well. Make sure it's appropriate. You know, we don't want to see fluffy bum 3000.
Oh, brilliant! Yeah, I bet. Well, both working at HR, I've probably seen a lot of things like that.
Yeah, 100%. So just those little things, you know, check the phone number and, you know, make sure the email address is appropriate per professional setting, and that it's correct and you're capable, you're okay with sharing it. But I would say you asked kind of about the differences. Like, I would say the CV is one thing, and that's important that you do a little bit of research as what are the norms in the CV structure in the country that you're applying for, and follow some of those, even though some of them mightn't seem normal compared to what you're used to in your neck of the woods. Yeah. I think the other thing as well is, if I just take Spain as an example, it's important that you do a little bit of research on the local job market, so the salary ranges.
Okay. Yeah.
And why is that important? Because in Spain, salary levels are lower than the UK. Okay. And why is that? Because the cost of living here is significantly lower than the UK. So it's all relative. But I've seen many situations where candidates apply for roles in a country like Spain. They haven't really familiarised themselves with the fact that the cost of living is lower, so salary ranges will be lower. And then when the recruitment department presents to them the starting salary for the role, they rule themselves out of the race because of failure to research.
Yeah, and so they've put themselves out of the running, haven't they? Because they've based it on. So really, what you're saying is research is really key. We're sort of talking about Spain, but, you know, wherever you were going to work abroad, to really research that market and what that looks like you say, salary and all those different things. So you pitch yourself 100%. Right.
Exactly. And the same applies on the other side. So if you're applying for a role in somewhere like the Nordics in Sweden, for example, you know, you're going to have a very increased cost of living compared to what you're maybe used to in the UK or Ireland, unless you're coming from a major city. So you want to make sure that you're pitching your salary range correctly, so you don't do yourself a disservice.
Yeah, if not, you could go out there and not afford to live. Like, you've got your salary.
Absolutely.
And then it's massive differences, isn't there? So yeah, that's a great bit of advice, and probably might not even think about that, because you might think maybe you want to go somewhere for a certain reason, but actually that's really important.
Yeah, and I think sometimes when we look at different countries, the salary variables are different. So I think it's important as well maybe to connect with some people that maybe work in that company on LinkedIn, and maybe ask them about the kind of norms, you know, in terms of how does the salary structure work? What percentage can I expect of things like my bonus for my comp and benefit model? Because they're different. They are different between the countries. Yeah.
Yeah, and it sort of leads me on to, you know, you get your CV right, you do some research, you know. So in the UK, probably we would look on website, you know what I mean, maybe Indeed or something, but then we have recruitment agencies, or we go on LinkedIn to find contact. You know, there's lots of different things. Is that different when you go abroad? And again, you know, is there a different process or different contacts?
No, that's the good part. Those kind of fundamentals are pretty much the same. So LinkedIn, you know, you would be looking at what are the companies in the area and connecting with those recruiters on LinkedIn and trying to see what open jobs they have. In terms of the job boards, Indeed is very popular over in this part of the world. It seems to be the kind of go-to platform of choice, job boards for this, like, Southern Europe. And that's where most serious companies are advertising their roles. You can find Glassdoor as well here, where people will tend to put their experiences about the companies. But I would say, you know, again, we just need to be conscious of the feedback cultures in the countries. So, you know, sometimes it's a bit subjective. So all of that I would say is pretty much the same, which is good news. It's when you get through that process and you get the CV submitted, that's when the fun part starts for you, that you need to realize that things will be different and change. And then I would say, like, when we get past that stage then and you go into the interview stage, that's when the fun starts as well, because you probably need to spend a little bit of time researching, you know, what is the work-life balance culture like in the country. So Spain likes their work-life balance, so they take their lunch breaks, which is great. And when I first moved here, that was a bit of a shock, because I was coming from, unfortunately, I had kind of been coming for a culture where I thought that you had to hustle, work through the lunch break to prove yourself. But in Spain, you take your breaks in your lunch break.
Oh, wow.
So if you're in an interview and, you know, you're talking about, you know, I work really hard, I work through my lunch break, you need to be conscious that you're not ruling yourself out due to a poor culture fit with the interviewer. Yeah.
That's really interesting, isn't it? Because, like, you know, and culture and that difference, isn't it? Because, like, I think, like, in the UK, I mean, think about all my jobs, I've probably worked through lunch breaks. You know, it's just, but to have that awareness that it is different, it's really helpful, isn't it?
100%. And I think it's great. Spain is great when it comes to that. But when you are moving from another part of the world where that wasn't necessarily the norm, it just takes a little bit of a mindset shift and just getting used to.
Yeah, definitely. And then what about sort of working in companies? Do you find, I mean, I suppose, like, if you're an international company, it changes, I would say, for some cultures, but, you know, it will be the same, won't it? But is there any difference working for a Spanish company or that you've experienced?
Yeah, so as I say, I have worked predominantly with international companies over here. So it's been very, I guess, open-minded, because there'd be an understanding that, you know, it's a bit of a cultural melting pot and we need to make that work. So what I would say that, you know, when you are moving to a country like Spain, where the way you live your life is so heavily dictated by the culture and the climate, people work hard when they're at work, but they take their time off. So work-life balance is massively appreciated. But in terms of Spanish companies, now I have worked with a lot of Spanish colleagues and managed Spanish teams over here. Hierarchy is very important to Spanish people. Okay. So they respect their boss because it's the boss. Whereas that, you know, that would have been an adjustment for me when I would have first moved in the early days, because I would have believed in autonomy, that, you know, we encourage the team to work together and somebody isn't just respected because of their role, they earn it. And I think you need to understand Spain's culture in terms of where it came from in the 80s and 90s to understand why it's like that. But they do respect hierarchy, that's for sure.
Excellent. That's really interesting. So yeah, brilliant. Thank you. So is that what from your point of view, and you know, sort of, you've got so much experience, and what would be maybe 3 top tips, or even one tip that you would say, actually, if you're going to take anything away from this conversation and you're thinking about moving abroad and working, what would they be for you, Sandra?
Oh, that's a great question. And my answer to that would be, don't rule yourself out of the race because you think that you don't have the language. Okay. That's a mistake I just see people make all of the time. And the language, it's back to what we mentioned earlier. The language is definitely going to be important if your long-term objective is to stay in the country. Okay. But if you have a short-term plan to move for a year and you want to experience that culture, that's still possible, but you need to tailor your job search towards internationally based companies rather than the more local orientated companies. So I just wouldn't want people that have a dream of working and using their skill sets abroad to rule themselves out because they feel that, well, sure, I can't do that because I don't have the language, and that's just not what we do, because it's still possible for you. You just have to be clever about how you're structuring your job search.
Yeah, excellent. And I think I was listening to because you run a podcast with your husband, don't you? Which is brilliant. And I was listening to episode 59, which is all about your career. So if anybody is interested, then definitely go and listen to Sandra's podcast, because it was fascinating. It was absolutely fascinating. So
we do, and the purpose of it is a bit like what you do. It's just to try to, I suppose, share our experience of living in a different country with people, because the world is changing and people are able to travel more and experience working in different cultures, and honestly speaking, working abroad has been one of the most enriching things for my career. When I moved to Spain in 2016, I was a pretty experienced leader, and I thought I had seen and knew everything. I thought I had a pretty full toolkit, but I was quickly rocked to my core in, I guess, my first 6 months in my new role, because I didn't really know how to communicate with people. I thought I was a good communicator. Okay. But when you have to go to a country and start learning the difference between high context and low context communication and cultural norms and nuances, sometimes you're offending people without even realizing it.
Right.
So,
yes.
That was a massive learn for me, and it was one of the most enriching experiences of my career. And I think that honestly, it has really shaped who I am today as a person, and really taught me how to watch and observe and listen.
Oh, it's fascinating. So thank you. Is there anything else you think before we finish? Is there anything that you think is worth sharing, or?
No, absolutely. I think we've covered it all. It's exciting topic.
It is, isn't it? And I just think, if I think back to when I left school, I wouldn't have even thought about, it was a long time ago, about working abroad. But I think, like you say now, there are so many different options, aren't there? To explore different places is great.
And like Spain, we have the pandemic to thank for some things, obviously, in the fact that how our working world has changed. And Spain has a visa program called Digital Nomad. So it allows people, if your company supports you to work remotely, you can acquire a work visa into Spain. So there's options. And I know there's many, many other countries around the world that offer the same. So it mightn't actually even mean quitting your job, packing your suitcases and moving. It might actually mean just talking to your HR department about their internal mobility programs and what options they have for you to work abroad.
You never know, do you? Never know. That's actually a really good point as well. So no, that's brilliant. So thank you very much. It's been so great to talking to you.
Thank you.
I now want to move to Spain, I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I'll come come and join you. So no, it's brilliant.
Do that.
And what I'll do is I'll put your details in the bottom about your podcast, which if you're thinking about going to Spain, is so worth listening to. You have some great speakers on there, so it's really, really
Thank you.
interesting. And about
Thanks, Sandra.
your property business as well, because if you're relocating, you might need to speak to Sandra. So
Yeah. We're always here to help or answer any questions that anybody has. So my inbox is
Brilliant.
always open.
Brilliant. Thanks for your time today. It's nice to talk to you.
Thanks, Sandra.
See you later. Bye. Bye.
Ciao, ciao.
If you like the video, make sure to like, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss any future uploads of Career Voices.